As photographers, our photographs are hugely important to us, right? So if you have a hard disk failure or your computer fails, or even worse, your house goes up in smoke in a fire or it gets flooded, are you absolutely certain that your photographs are protected? So welcome to the video, and we're talking about backups this time. And as photographers, it's one thing that we have to get absolutely right. Make sure all of our photographs are completely backed up and are safe against any disasters. So I think it's fairly common knowledge that a decent backup strategy is to follow the 3-2-1 principle. What does the 3-2-1 principle mean? Well, it means 3 copies in total of all of your data. So 2 copies of which are kept locally on 2 completely different devices. So that's 1 copy on your main device, a second backup copy, and a 3rd copy should be kept either on a device completely away from your home or your office, wherever the main computer is, or nowadays it's easy to use a cloud backup service. So in my case, I have a Mac Studio and on board is a 1TB SSD. Now I like to leave that as free as I possibly can from large files. So for that reason, I keep all of my photographs on one of these. It's a 10TB external hard disk. It's a LaCie D2, and that's the first copy of all of my data. I have an identical 10TB D2, which is right next to it, and that is my second copy, like my first backup if you like. And then my 3rd copy I use BackBlaze, so that is a fairly economic for personal home use, a fairly economic backup cloud service, and that served me well for many years. So I use Lightroom for all of my proper serious photographs and my serious photography, but I also use Apple Photos as well for my more casual photography and my iPhone photos. So we'll look at Apple Photos very briefly later, but the main subject of this video is your Lightroom, your serious Lightroom photographs. So when it comes to your serious Lightroom photographs that you've spent lots of time taking and processing, you want a robust backup strategy that protects those photographs against any single point of failure. Now, what's a single point of failure? I mean a failure of a hard disk, a failure of the computer, or a fire or flood in your home or office where that computer or hard disk is. So I've researched this over a few years and I've come up with this system, and it's my preferred way of backing up all of my data and especially my photographs. Now, you may do this differently and you may be using a NAS or something like that, but I use direct attached storage and this system works for me. But the most important thing is you must be doing backups. So if you're not backing up any of your photographs, then hopefully you might learn something from this, and it's worth learning from my mistakes because I've made a few on the way. If you're getting something from this video so far, then please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more photography related content. Now let's get back to backups. So let's take a look at Lightroom. There are a number of specific individual items that we need to consider backing up. You've got the app itself, which is easily downloadable from Adobe, so there's no need to back up the app itself. But you've got the catalogue, the preferences, the plugins, the presets, and the photographs themselves. So the current Lightroom catalogue should be stored on the fastest drive you have available. So for me, in my case, that is the internal SSD on my Mac Studio. I keep mine in my Photos folder in a subfolder called Lightroom Pro Image Library. Just to give you some idea of its size, I have over 100,000 images in my catalogue and it's only 1.3 gigabytes, so it's a relatively small file size. In my case, this is backed up with the rest of the internal SSD on my Mac Studio onto my time capsule using Apple's Time Machine, which is a part of Mac OS. Now, because I'm backing up the entire internal SSD, rather conveniently it also means that it's backing up my plugins, preferences and presets, which are held within the application support folder in the Adobe folder in the library. So that's quite convenient to get that all backed up anyway. So that's all backed up on my Apple time capsule using Time Machine. Then, in addition to that, the Mac's internal SSD is also backed up to the cloud using BackBlaze. So that's one copy on the Mac, a second copy on the time capsule, and a third copy on the in the cloud using BackBlaze. So that satisfies my 3-2-1 strategy as far as the Lightroom presets, plugins and preferences are all concerned. Then next up are the actual photographs. So the photographs are stored, as I mentioned earlier, on my external primary 10TB LaCie D2. So that's my first copy. Then using Carbon Copy Cloner, I back up that drive to my secondary D2. So that's the second copy. And I get that to back up the first drive once a night. So at 10 o'clock every night, my primary D2 is backed up onto my secondary drive. So that's the first copy and the second copy taken care of. But as part of the BackBlaze backup cloud service, I'm also getting the primary D2 backed up into the cloud as well. So my photographs are in 3 places: on the primary D2, the secondary D2 and the BackBlaze cloud. So that's my 3-2-1 strategy taken care of for my photographs. Then Lightroom can also make incremental backup copies of your catalogue. Now this is quite a useful service to take advantage of. So I get Lightroom to make a backup incremental copy of my catalogue once a week, and I get that copied onto my primary external drive. So again, that gets copied over to my secondary drive, and the primary drive is also backed up to the cloud with BackBlaze. So that's my 3-2-1 strategy, taking care of my incremental backups as well. So you can tell Lightroom how often you want to do these incremental copies in the catalogue settings in the menu. And I'm choosing to do it once a week. And I think that's perfectly adequate to get an incremental copy backed up. Now, a couple of important things to note. A RAID system like this Drobo is a RAID system. It's a system for redundancy. It's not a backup system. And the reason for that is because although there are several mirrored disks, it's actually one box, it's one device. So in your 3-2-1 backup strategy, it is one device. It's not considered to be a duplicate second copy in the same box, because if the box develops a fault, then potentially you've lost a whole storage unit full of data. Now this happened to me a while back in 2015 or 16. I had one of these. This is a Western Digital My Book, and it developed a software glitch which wiped the entire RAID system. So both disks in there were mirrored and I lost everything off of that unit. So that's the reason why RAID is not considered to be a backup. So if you're using a RAID system, it still needs a second copy and a third copy in the cloud. So consider a RAID system as one copy only. Now another thing to note, as I briefly mentioned earlier, is Apple Photos. Now if you use Apple Photos and you use photos in the cloud, then this really should be considered to be a syncing service and not a backup service. Now the convenience of it means that you can access all of your photographs across all of your devices, and that's all well and good, but in theory it is only one copy. So you really should download all of your Apple Photos and back them up onto at least a second device, and preferably onto a third device in another cloud or on another device away from your main computer. So think of Apple Photos in the cloud as one copy only and a syncing service, not a backup service. And likewise, if you use Apple's Documents and Desktop in the cloud, consider that to be exactly the same thing. It's a syncing service, not a backup service. So really all of those documents and files should be downloaded and backed up to a second disk and somewhere else away from your main computer to be 100% secure. So that's my entire 3-2-1 backup strategy as far as my photographs and my computer is concerned. So hopefully you've learnt something from this video. Please consider subscribing, or at least give this video a thumbs up. That would be fantastic, and I hope to see you on the next video. But if there's one thing you do take from this, please make sure that you are doing backups. One copy of your photographs or your data is just not good enough, so please do some backups. I'll see you again on the next video.